Hello, all you digital wizards out there. Today we're going to go over pose-to-pose animation. Let's get started. One of the first things we need to do is create a new document. And I want to make sure that it's 500 by 500. But what's most important is that we actually click on the two different onion skins. So I'm going to settings and I'm checking both of those on. And as well as that, I'm going to go ahead and just check on Pixel Perfect because it just makes my drawing a little bit smoother. At this point, I don't want to press that X. I want to go back to New and press New Drawing. And now I can get started with my pose-to-pose animation. Now, to start us off, we're just going to do some basic shapes. So I'm going to use a square and a circle to start this. Before I make the circle, I'm actually going to add in another frame. For those of you that don't know what a frame is, it's basically another drawing on the computer. And that onion skin that we put on in our settings, it's going to allow us to see both drawings at the same time, kind of like tracing paper. One other thing you might notice is that I'm changing my colors between my circle and my square. The reason why I'm doing that is just so that I can really see which one's which when the onion skin is on, because when they're both the same color, they kind of start to blend in together. And it doesn't seem like it's a big deal right now with the square and the circle, but it becomes a much bigger deal when you're dealing with characters and a lot of different moving parts. Now that we have our beginning and our end drawing, we want to make one that goes in between the two. Now, I added a new frame and I put it in the middle by using the little arrows, and you can see that the onion skin allows me to see both. Now, the key to this is we know this is supposed to be in between a square and a circle. So I'm going to grab my my pencil, and I'm going to try and draw a shape that's sort of in between the two. And it helps if you look at all the edges. So right here, I'm kind of going in, and then you see I'm going kind of in between where the circle and the square wall is. So once I'm done drawing this, I want to check it in my frames and just see if it's working for me. And I play that to see if it's going to be smooth. Obviously, that's not smooth. So what that tells me is I have to add another frame. Now I'm putting that one in between my first and my third frame, and I'm going to again pick a different color and try and make a shape that goes in between these two. So I'm drawing a line that goes in between the two walls of each of my shapes. So again, I'm checking my frames, looking from one to the next to see where there's any big jumps from one drawing to the next drawing. And if there's a big jump, I want to add a frame in there. So I'm going to add that frame in between my last frame and the one that comes right before. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a shape in between those two walls, just like I did before. So I'm checking my animation, and at this point, it looks like my animation's pretty smooth. I'm not sure if there's any other drawings that I can add in between. They would be really overlapped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting colors in, but you'll notice that when I do individual colors, it's not smoothly transitioning between the colors. So that's something to keep in mind. So to fix that, I'm simply going to make sure that all these shapes and all these drawings have the same color. And now we're going to play our animation, and it is smoothly transitioning from a circle to a square. But I want to pause it, so I'm just going to make sure that the first frame and the last frame are at 500 milliseconds. And it just gives me a chance to appreciate that it's actually transitioning from one to the next. So moving on from basic shapes, I'm going to create a new document again and make sure the onion skin is on. And it is, so I'm all good. All I have to do now is press New Drawing. So I go back, click New Drawing. And this time, instead of shapes, I'm going to do faces. So I'm going to be going from one facial expression to the next. So I'm going to do this surprised face to sort of like a squinchy face. So I wanted to change the shape of the head as well, just so you can see how you would transition and make an in-between for these two different faces. So I'm adding a new frame in, and I'm using the arrows to place that in between the both, and I can see both faces, and now you can see where changing the color between the two is very helpful, because if both of these were red, it'd be kind of hard to figure out what's what. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just try and find an in-between for the head, and then I'm going to find an in-between for like the eyes and then the mouth. So kind of break it down into parts if you can. So see here, I want to get in between the two different head shapes, and I'm just kind of going from one side to the next. So that's kind of in between there, and then I'm going to move the next side, and then, oh yeah, that's pretty in between, and then make sure that the bottom is correct too. And that looks like a pretty good in between shape. Now I want to make sure that I am doing an in between for the other parts of his face. So the mouth is pretty easy, I just make it about half the size, but the eyes, they need to feel about half closed because they're moving into a closed position. And I'm going to do the same with the eyeball. I'm just going to kind of move the pupil down a little bit, and then I change the color, of course, so I can kind of tell the difference between all of the drawings. So now I have an in-between and a final drawing, and again, it's way too fast, so I need to start adding frames in between. But since you guys already know what I'm about to do, which is just make an in-between for every single one of these, I'm just going to speed this up. At this point, I have finished all my in-betweens, and I'm going to go ahead and color each of my frames or each of my drawings the same color. So in this case, I'm just going to use that paint bucket to fill them all with black. And then I'm going to go in and change the actual face color. So I'm going to actually make the face yellow and the eyeballs white. And then I'm going to play it for you. So isn't that beautiful? Seriously, it looks great, and those in-betweens make it so that I don't lose the size or the proportions, and it doesn't go all over the place. It's a very smooth animation. And again, I'm just gonna switch that beginning and end frame to 500 milliseconds just so that we have a chance to kind of appreciate the beginning and the end here as it transitions from one to the next. Now our next step is going to definitely be a bit more difficult. We're going to be going from one full-bodied character to another full-bodied character, and I'm going to keep it within the animal section just so that, you know, we're dealing with the same kind of limbs and everything. And again, new drawing, and I'm going to go ahead and show you what I'm going to do here. this point, I have finished my 2 animal drawings. Well, it's more like a teddy bear and a squirrel. They're not my best drawings, but that's okay. We're gonna make the in-between for both. So I added a frame and I'm trying to figure out first what would be my in-between head. So I'm kind of going in between the 2 different heads, and thankfully I made the heads pretty much the same. They're just a big circle. However, one is a 3/4 view where he's kind of looking off to the side, and one is looking straight ahead. So that's a little bit difficult. So I'm looking at the 2 different eyes, both left eyes, and trying to find one in between, and then I'm looking at both right eyes and trying to find one in between the right eyes as well. And then I'm going to move on to the nose and try and do the same thing for the nose. Now the nose is 2 different shapes, so one's like a circle, one's like an oval, so we want to do something that's sort of in between the circle and the oval. And the mouth especially is going to be a little bit difficult because, as you can see, one mouth is just a little dot, and the other one is like one of those big W's. So I'm gonna start making the W using my pencil, but I'm not gonna connect it to the nose quite yet because I want to give it something kind of in between the 2. My next step are these ears, and again, they are very different. So I'm trying to find a shape that's sort of in between that sort of triangle shape versus the big half circle. And I'm just going to keep doing this process for each and every one of his limbs. And now you can really see where having different colors is very helpful because it's starting to turn into like a giant spaghetti at this point. So here I have the arm. One arm's really round, the other one's kind of square. So I'm trying to do something in between for those arms. And it's even hard just to kind of figure out where the arms should go because the bodies are also very different. So that I'm going to work on that body next, where you see the squirrel's body is very long, the teddy bear's body is not so long, so I'm trying to find like an in between. So it's like a medium length body here, and we're basically coming up with this teddy squirrel shape. And since the tail doesn't even exist for the teddy bear, we want to find like an in-between part of the tail, so as it grows it will look more realistic. Well, not realistic, but smooth as it's coming out. And lastly, we have his feet, and the feet couldn't be more different. One's very, sharp and one's not, so we're trying to come up with like an in-between for those feet. And again, not the easiest to do, especially since the legs are so far apart. But I think this is a decent in-between drawing. And once you have that in-between drawing, it does make things much easier. But getting there sometimes is a little difficult. My best suggestion is just always to kind of look at both limbs or both pieces and try and find something that matches in between. So now that we have our in between, I'm going to speed up this process once more because, as you guys know, I am literally just making more in betweens. I'm adding more frames in between the drawings I already have, and I'm going to just basically do this over and over and over again until it looks very smooth. So again, check your drawings in between. If something ever feels like it's jumping, that's where you want to add a frame and kind of smooth that transition. At this point, I have finished all my drawings, so I'm just going to color them all black and I will show you the final results. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, give it a like or subscribe. Until next time, keep making digital magic.